Now, several agreements have been signed between Pretoria and Beijing at the Union buildings. Among them was for energy, as South Africa continues to battle a crippling power crisis. Agreements for the resumption of beef exports to China were also signed. This comes as the BRICS summit, of course, continues in Johannesburg and Sandton. Let's unpack, though, the significance of SAChina relations and bring in the University of Cape Town senior lecturer, Dr. Steven Kuo, who joins us via our video link this morning. It's lovely to have you on the program, sir. Thanks very much indeed for making time. You know, often there's talks of a potential second scramble for Africa, with China apparently leading the pack. When we see these kind of agreements being signed, how worried should we be about that?
Thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me. I think the argument about a second scramble for Africa is overblown by Western media. And I think what we in South Africa and we in Africa ought to do is to actually take the bull by the horn and insert ourselves and argue and negotiate better deals for Africans. So China is here to do business. They're not here to give alms. So we just need to negotiate the very best deals for ourselves.
And what does that look like for you? I mean, I haven't been able to come across the details behind the deals that have been signed, but I imagine among the questions to be asked is, what does China stand to benefit from it, and at what cost does that come to South Africa?
I understand that MOUs have been signed between the two governments at the very top, right? And I'm cautiously optimistic that these MOUs will filter through. So for those of us who are based in South Africa, I suppose the test is in the pudding, isn't it? It's easy enough to have MOUs signed, but we want to see actual investments coming to the ground and actual jobs that's been offered in Chinese invested factories and other kinds of programs. So it's important for South African businesses and government to work hard to wring out the best benefits out of these Chinese investments. From the Chinese end, as you can see, that there is as the viewers know, there is a growing tension between the Chinese and the West, led by the US. So the Chinese are keen to diversify, right? They're keen to, whether it's food security, whether it's political support, whether it is their construction companies and excess manufacturing capacity. The Chinese need to come through to Africa to explore the African market. So it's not so much what is going to cost China. It ought to be for the Chinese to look at Africa as a potential market. And if Chinese companies are willing to invest, pushed by the Chinese government policies, then we here in Africa need to take advantage to the best of our abilities.
At some stage, there are people who suggest South Africa will have to make a very firm decision about where it stands when it comes to those tensions you've just spoken about. I mean, we're seen to have pretty healthy diplomatic relations with the US and the West, some people might say, but are obviously also cozying up to China itself. Is that, do you reckon, the path South Africa does need to take, making a decision about which side of the line it lies? Or do you reckon there is a sweet spot in the middle somewhere where we can negotiate both diplomatic ties without angering the other side, if you know what I mean?
The latter. I think for South Africa, so we are a regional power in Africa. The two superpowers in the world today is the US and China. We, as a middle power in Africa, we need to toe the fine line. We cannot offend the US and the West, nor do we want to offend the rising BRICS countries. Pretoria needs to walk the fine line of having enough strategic ambiguity and be friends with everybody. It's to South Africa's interest, national interest, and to our economic interest that we continue to have good trading relationship with the West on the one hand, with the Chinese on the other hand, and to explore new trading relationships with existing BRICS countries. And if expansion happens, then with all these other new countries that are coming through. So no, my view is in fact opposite. We need to be ambiguous, a little bit more ambiguous, and say we are good friends with China, we are good friends with India. We also value the relationship with the West and the EU. We can't be one side or the other, because it seems to me the gulf between the Chinese and the West is probably going to widen. And we need to, it's in South Africa's interest to be friends with everyone.
Sure. How well do you reckon we are at doing that? I mean, as you're speaking now, we're playing visuals of the moment when the Chinese president was essentially given the Order of South Africa. To be honest, I'd never heard of it until it was given to Xi Jinping. But essentially, it's this great honor, we're told, given to good friends of the country. No doubt the U.S. is also taking note of this. So how good do you reckon we are at being ambiguous and at being clear enough that we're friends with no one and also we're friends with everyone, but also take no sides?
I don't think we're doing a particularly good job. As our supposed non-aligned position, but it seems that we stand with the Russians a lot more. We ought to be a little bit more ambiguous. I think the ANC ideologically are more comfortable with the Chinese, right? However, our commercial interests it's spread across the world, West and China and India and everybody else. So I would prefer Pretoria to look. Our relationship with China is quite good. It's without doubt. Our relationship with China, the ANC's relationship with the Chinese Communist Party is top notch. The only thing that I can say there is that South African businesses needs to do more to, if you like, take advantage of the good political relationship. It seems to me the ANC's relationship with Washington is not as good as we have seen over the last year and a half of the Russian war, and South Africa taking supposedly a neutral stance. I think we need to work harder to cultivate and rejuvenate our relationship with the West. That's my view.
The whole point of these bilateral relations, the multilateral relations that exist within the BRICS summit, is to create this new world order, this alternative, in fact, to what's already been established. Within that reimagined world order, China is seen as a major player itself. If it is to retain that, I wonder what you reckon it should walk out with from this particular summit.
Well, China has made no secret that it prefers a multipolar world order. Since the end of the Cold War, it has been very much a unipolar one with the United States call all the shots. So China is keen to change that, and most of the developing countries, most of the global south would like a multipolar world order where there is more equitable say from everybody else. So, and understandably, with this expressed wish to shift the global order from the current liberal global order, which has been in existence since the end of the Cold War, certainly, if not end of the Second World War, the West are concerned because the U.S. is concerned. And we can see that with the current trade war between the U.S. and China. So it's hard to say. Most likely, from what I can tell, we are gradually moving into Cold War II. So there is going to be two poles, China and U.S. And by the look of things, South Africa is more on the Chinese side, on the developing country side. So that is going to be the fact. And we are moving towards a multipolar global order. That is happening. And for Pretoria, the President Ramaphosa and Minister Pandor, the job is to navigate the shifting global order the best we can, and preferably to wring out the best deals out of both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it goes without saying, easier said than done. I think anybody who's watching is sympathetic to the tricky balancing act that has to be struck by a country like South Africa, given its position. Dr. Steven Kuo, thanks very much indeed for speaking to us. Appreciate your time on Newzroom Afrika. Dr. Kuo is a senior lecturer at the University of Cape Town.